We return to the news of the day now, and Senator Andrew Bragg and Labor's Anika Wells join us for our regular chat. Senator Bragg, why can't the government simply say this is a one-off with the Tamil family, grant them the right to stay here under a ministerial discretion and be done with it? To say basically that this would be a compassionate move as a dividend of the strong borders that the government's achieved.
G'day, Kieran. Well, as you know, we've tried the alternative approach of Labor's border protection policies when they were last in office, where there were exceptions made all the time. Now, that led to a disaster and a loss of control of our borders, and we know what the consequences are of making exceptions.
Anika Wells, you're crossing to us from beautiful Queensland, and this has been a very Queensland story with the Billawillow community coming out to support this Tamil family. But we've heard Peter Dutton very strong just before accusing Anthony Albanese of politicising the issue. Do you think that's fair?
Well, I didn't see that because Anthony Albanese has been with me out meeting local workers here in Nunda this morning. But I'll pick up with what Andrew said just there. The idea that Labor somehow made exceptions and the LNP couldn't possibly do that. Minister Dutton has made more than 4,000 exceptions in his time in this portfolio. He makes something on average like 3 exceptions a day. And we all remember when those exceptions included a number of au pairs whom he received requests via text message for. So I do not buy the argument that exceptions can't be made. That is what the policy of ministerial exceptions are there for.
But if you look at this case, Anika Wells, it's been to every court, including the High Court. Is the problem here, the sad reality, as much compassionate as many of, all of us feel about the kids and the family, if you were to relent now, Anika Wells, then it's basically a global spotlight on this family who arrived by boat from Sri Lanka when Labor returned more than 2,000 in 2012 alone.
Well, I'll say 2 things on that. Firstly, I don't think that this family should be punished or should suffer any further because of some analysis paralysis or failure to take decisions by this government. And secondly, it's not just Labor asking for this to happen. Social progressive member for Flynn, Ken O'Dowd, has asked for this to happen. Leading left luminary Barnaby Joyce has asked for this to happen. The community has been very clear and united on this one. It is very clear what the minister should do. And we just don't buy the obfuscations that he keeps making.
Andrew Bragg, if we can move on to another topic that's going to be heating up this afternoon about Christopher Pyne and Julia Bishop and the jobs they've taken since they left Parliament. We know Martin Parkinson, former Secretary of PMC, said that they didn't breach any ministerial standards from his perspective. But certainly, at least in the case of Christopher Pyne, if it's not for the specialist knowledge he gained as Defence Minister, why would Ernst & Young be hiring him?
Well, Annalise, I think the principle behind the ministerial code of conduct is clear. People shouldn't be using information that they have gained as a minister for commercial advantage in the immediate term. As you know, the Secretary of the Department of PMC has said that there is no issue here to look into. But there is a Senate inquiry, and as a Senator, obviously we greatly respect the Senate's right to inquire, and we'll be participating in that process.
Anika Wells, your thoughts on where that's at? Because obviously it's an issue that both sides of politics have had to grapple with.
Yeah, but I think in the case of Christopher Pyne, it makes me think of that line from Casablanca. Of all the jobs in all the world, he had to walk into this one. It is very hard to see how he could construct and maintain the Chinese walls necessary to do this properly. And a ministerial code of conduct is only as good as the Prime Minister who manages it. And in this instance, we have had deafening silence from the government, and it has fallen to a Senate committee to do the inquiry themselves.
Senator Bragg, finally on the economy, we've seen the GDP figures out this week. Are you comfortable with where the government's at on this? Because obviously very much softening growth and so much at stake in terms of whether or not those tax cuts are actually going to be spent or people pocket them.
We've had 28 years of growth, as you know, Kieran, and it is a difficult global environment. We are focusing on trying to get private investment up, That's why we're looking at industrial relations and other things which will improve productivity. So certainly we have processes in place or processes about to start which will help us galvanise private sector investment.
Anika Wells, it's been pretty hard for Labor to really mount a an attack really on these economic figures when it still hasn't decided on those key policies on things like negative gearing and franking credits. Do you think it's time for Labor to rule those two policy changes out?
Well, I'm here as the Labor member for Lilley to look after the local constituents here, and what they are telling me and what they are saying, what they've said to the leader here this morning is that they're not concerned about the quarterly figures coming in September perhaps being a shade better than they were this time around. They're talking about local jobs and cost of living. Here in the north side of Brisbane, we have had more than 840 jobs lost in the past week. Lockheed Martin at Pinkenba is shutting down operations. You would have seen that Virgin Australia is cutting 750 jobs from corporate office, which is also here on Brisbane's north side. So people are worried about a lack of jobs and a lack of jobs plan from this government. They are the government. They are elected to govern. They should give us a jobs plan and they should give us a better wages plan. That's what people are talking about.
Anika Wells, Senator Bragg, thanks so much. We'll catch you next week. Let's